Welcome to the Advertising Forum. This is episode 3 of our Open Garden series, sponsored by AI Digital.
With us today is Tim Ringel, founder and CEO of Meet the People. He's here to chat with us about how openness evolves when agencies grow in size, complexity, and expectations. Tim, our pre-chat was awesome. Thank you for joining us today, and welcome to the Advertising Forum.
Sure was.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. I'm excited.
I love it. You summarize what you do as an agency, what you do as a CEO and founder. Your enthusiasm, trust me, is definitely welcome here. I'd love to hear from you, Tim. How does the definition of openness change when you move from building what was a singular agency into operating multi-agencies across the board? How does that change for you?
Yeah, I mean, wow, openness is a really big topic, right? Because I come out of digital advertising 30 years ago, SEO, and then everything that came after with Google and whatnot. So walled gardens have been part of my life journey forever. So when we talk about everything that's client, media related, data related, we can talk about this for hours when it comes to what really is needed to make brands successful. But in terms of openness within my organizational structure, from having started 30 years ago with one agency that eventually ended up selling, and everything being under my control because it was a private company, to what we're doing right now with 10 agencies within one organization, where my objective is to share as much business as possible across those companies with clear objectives for our clients to drive revenue and return on investment for them and growth. Openness is everything, because if I can't share information in my organization on a client, on KPIs, on goals, on targets, if you can't tell a media buyer why we designed a certain brand and brand purpose, it's a disaster. You're never going to get to your objective. So openness is the core of what really I try to build with Meet the People. And it goes through all layers. Is it easy? No. It's disastrously complicated because the industry makes it complicated, clients make it complicated. But in the end, that's the ultimate goal. I want to make sure that my people can work on clients seamlessly, no matter what part of the advertising marketing value chain we touch, right? That's really what openness means for me in the agency universe.
Yeah, I love it. And during the pre-chat, you mentioned something about, I want to do everything that the holdcos are doing wrong. And I loved that quote, and I will remember that forever. And I will associate that with Meet the People. As you're growing, standardization becomes more important. And so does, maintaining that flexibility. How do you manage that tension between those two things, the standardization and the flexibility?
I remember when I worked in a holding company for 3 years, and it was beautiful and disastrous at the same time, here in New York, actually. And my team was coming to me literally every week saying why are we restructuring? Why are we changing this? Why are we changing that? And guys, we're growing 50% year on year, right? If our company stays the same, then we're not going to be able to grow. Everything has to change. Everything is always in flux. That's how a company grows. That's how a company becomes successful. And that's the same to your question. That's the same how I look at this. If you over-standardize, my company is technically a startup at scale, right? I have 750, 800 people, 10 brands, everything basically 100% owned by Meet the People. And we are kind of the scale of a grown-up agency, I would say, but we operate very much like a startup. So too much standardization is going to choke flexibility, growth, innovation, and no structure at all also chokes it because everybody just does 1,000 things at the same time into the wrong direction. So finding that balance is complete key, but I'm more of the do things a little unstructured and throw some spaghetti on the wall and see what sticks and break things and make mistakes as long as it doesn't cost me $500,000, right? I always encourage people to kind of try, error, and make mistakes. And then my CEO is yeah, okay, Tim said that, but maybe we do need a bit of a handbook here, right? So yeah, it's this constant push and pull between, I think, my management team and I, where I'm let's go. And they, have to kind of pick up the pieces that I throw behind me. But in the end, it's that dynamic that makes us kind of a hyper growth company, right? 30% year-on-year growth. And we don't want to stop. I want to at least double or triple what we have today.
As a startup, as a company as well, we are more than familiar than just throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing if it sticks. We build and remove very quickly. People don't even notice when it doesn't work, but they definitely notice when it does work. And I love that strategy. My last question for you before I pass it on to Jeremy. at an enterprise level, how are you selecting your vendors and your partners? What's the process there? How do you decide who you're going to work with?
Yeah. And it evolves. So this evolves very much with the scale of the company. And so we probably have hundreds of vendors across, our hundreds of millions of media spend, creative, like whatever, commerce, retail. So again, here also, the more you structure it, the more you choke innovation and ideas. But at the same time, we can't have subpar quality standards or subpar technology adoption, right? So I consciously make the decision to structure certain areas. And those areas usually are driven by really three factors. The first one is, does this help our client? Because if our client is not happy, we just like the holding companies, right? So client happiness is the ultimate goal to a growing organization. So if the client is happy and your people are happy, that's why it's in our name, then you have at least half of the rent, if not 70% of your success is kind of secured. Then you just don't have to fuck it up, pardon my French. So we select the vendors based on the quality we get. Number two is we have to structure some kind of certification quality process that we don't get, make an extreme example, served some garbage ads, some garbage content around our ads, like the typical brand safety stuff that we need to do just on the media side, for example. And then thirdly, so it has to be commercially viable, of course, right? What's the benefits that we get from that vendor to make sure that our clients are happy? Like, do we get better placements? Do we get some preferred treatment for our clients? And then fourth of all, obviously, it's also relationship, right? Because again, like, I like to work with entrepreneurial-led and driven companies because, Google's going to be here now, tomorrow, forever, but it's not like it's constant people there. So I like to build relationships with vendors where I can talk to peers, I can learn from, my organization can learn from, and we can grow together. That's probably key for me. But some vendors we have to select because they're the biggest in the market, right? Others we select because they're the best in the market. And that's where I think the whole concept of open gardens is fantastic, because no matter if you're a client, you have no interest in your stuff living in walled gardens. It is completely against your objective as a brand, as a client, and it's also against the objective as an agency. So vendors who play ball within the idea of tearing down those, these artificial walls, they are my favorites.
So good. So good. That is such a perfect transition. So what factors determine how open your tech stack can realistically be?
Yeah. Number one, so I see three layers of tech stack, right, that we use and have to deal with. Number one is the one that's forced on us by the platforms we have to use, right? There's no way around the Google's Matters of this world. We have to work with those platforms because dollars have to go there, because that's where audience is, right? So we have to deal with those tech stacks as well as the development of those tech stacks into AI and whatnot. So yes, that's the first layer. Can get better at it, have to evolve with them as they deploy stuff, right? The second one is third-party tech stack that we have a choice to adopt, where we don't have to, but we think it's beneficial to our organization, beneficial to our clients, beneficial to the work product. And then the third one is really what we build for ourselves. So that's proprietary stuff, right? That's proprietary solutions. For example, we just launched our AI platform. That's 6 different tools. And thanks to artificial intelligence, now we can liberate some of the research thinking tools that would have probably cost millions of dollars to build and or were inaccessible for mid-sized clients. We now can liberate those clients. A good example is media mix modeling. Like when you worked in a holding company media mix modeling was done every 6 months. You have to move $100 million of budget, and we're going to charge you $1 million for the media mix modeling, right? So that is obviously complete BS. So the reality is we launched our own predictive media mix modeling, AI-driven tool, and now we ingest GA data, we ingest all kinds of third-party, first-party data, and now we can model ourselves in real time, even if you only spend $1 million. So that's what I think for me means open tech stack, like the mix out of those three, and then figuring out like what your vendors also can bring to the table. Like what do we get from our vendors, for example, that is so much cutting edge that we don't have to build it ourselves. We don't want to replace it. We actually just want to use that vendor for a certain amount of time. Yeah.
So where have you seen Open Garden platforms directly impact performance or client trust. You're working across a multitude of different agencies within Meet the People. You're working with hundreds of different vendors. Help us understand just like where you've seen the clients just excitement take place.
Well, let's make an example. Again, it's very specific to us, right? Because I have creative agency, content, digital product, experiential, retail, media, performance marketing, all those kind of things. So I think where the biggest impact is where the biggest friction was in the past. So it makes no sense. I come out of digital media, like I'm really a search and programmatic kind of affiliate marketing. That's how I grew up my first 10 years of my life in my career or as an entrepreneur. So everything was measurable, right? And then you have creative people who do not think in data sets and data points, and please don't measure me because I had this brilliant creative idea. So I never had respect for creatives because I didn't really felt it was tangible what they were producing, because I had to sell with a shitty ad. I had to sell as much product as possible, no matter what they gave me, right? So from my perspective, breaking down these walled gardens, even though they're not tech-enabled walled gardens, but they're mind walled gardens as well as client structure walled gardens. A VP of brand doesn't talk to a VP of media, right? They hate each other for some reason. So breaking down those walled gardens, creating an open garden where data can flow between creative content, media activation, and analytics sounds so fucking simple. It's so obvious because you produce wrong imagery or wrong ads that don't perform if you don't give data points back. But for a lot of clients and platforms, it seems to be unable to do any of this, right? So that's one of my missions is I cannot have creatives talk about creative if they haven't looked at the data, how stuff performs, even if it's from a reach perspective, right? But they need to understand that. And being able to run that through systems, predicting outcomes, and that informing better creative, for me, is one of the biggest leverages we're going to have for clients and as an agency group as well. So for me, that's a very tangible example. And it has dramatic impact on ROI. If you notice, like, it's just
tangibility matters, ROI matters, and being able to work within an open ecosystem matters. It helps gain trust with your clients. Tim, this has been an awesome episode. We love chatting with you. We want to thank our series sponsor, AI Digital, for the Open Garden theme. And thank you everyone for watching, and we'll see you on the next episode. Tim, thank you. This has been great.
Thank you so much, guys. Thanks.